Not Titles podcast is proud to be sponsored by Land Trust Title Services, your partners for results. Well, hello, this is Steve Kaempf with the People Not Titles podcast, and we are on our September 4th edition, 2024. Matt, this is how many for us now?
I think we're at number 6 right now.
We're at number 6. Holy mackerel. Well, I want to welcome my compadre, cohort, and a partner in crime, Matt Lombardi. Matt is our senior marketing manager over at Land Trust Title Services, and he's really the reason why most of you are listening. I'll acknowledge that right out of the gate.
Well, I appreciate that, but we can't do this without the talent, the face, the personality leading the charge for this.
Thank you, Matt.
But thank you.
That. Mutual Admiration Society.
Absolutely.
All right, Matt, so let's get right into it. The NAR settlement, August 17th was kind of the date, right, that everyone was concerned about. Kind of like, it reminded me, I had little vibes of Y2K. Where the computers were going to shut down, banks were going to go out of business, it was going to be anarchy.
For you kids out there, Y2K.
Look it up. Google it.
Look it up. But yes, the world was going to end. Computers were going to crash. Planes were going to fall from the sky.
I had my bottled water and cat tuna that I was huddled in my crawl space waiting for everything to hit the fan.
I remember it well.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. But
so anyway. So I don't want to say it was a Y2K was a nothing burger, but I think part of the reason it was a nothing burger was because of all the steps to preparation beforehand, right? And so programmers were being paid a lot of money to get everything right, so that when it flipped over from 2000 as opposed to 19, whatever the year was, everyone was ready, right? And so I believe that a lot of the reason for a kind of smooth transition for August 17th is all the great work that brokerages have done to kind of get ahead of this, to do training, to make sure agents are professional. And, Matt, we'll probably cover this, we saw a lot of agents clear out of the business.
Yeah.
Because they kind of thought, I'm out. I was in here just for, just a kind of mild interest. But this is, I think, leveled up the pool of agents that are available out there.
I would agree with that statement. I think more to come with agent fallout. But yeah, as Steve said, August 17th was the start date of the implementation of what is the NAR settlement, which is buyer brokerage agreements need to be signed, as well as commissions no longer listed in the MLS. But yes, I would say between NAR, Illinois Realtors, the local boards here in the Chicago metro market and across the country, but also the brokerages taking the lead of educating their agents of how it should be done, has created, I think, more of a seamless approach. Right. And Y2K is a good example.
Great. And so, Matt, I think agents know what we're talking about. Attorneys know what we're talking about. I think mortgage people know what we're talking about. But there are probably buyers out there.
Yep.
Or sellers. So just for a refresher, you said two things. Yep. You said buyer agency agreement. So just talk about that for a second. What's changed there?
So in the olden days, it was, and we may have said this on a couple of our previous podcasts, but in the olden days before August 17th, the listing agent and the seller created an agreement. In that agreement, it said, I am going to get X amount when you sell this house, and there will be a commission for the buyer's agent that goes back to them that you are going to pay for. On the buy side, there was rarely an agreement signed, and so if someone was working with a buyer's representative or a buyer's agent, that buyer, if they asked the question, how much do I have to pay you for your services, the answer was usually nothing.
And sometimes, Matt, if you were a buyer, you might have had 2 or 3 agents on the line and said, hey, you look for properties there, look for whatever it is, right?
Right, and some consumers actually would work that and say, you could look here, you could look here, and
whatever house I buy, you're going to be taken care of by the seller.
And a lot of times buyers' agents were just hungry for the business, and they're like, great, don't worry about it. As long as you buy this property and I am representing you, I'm going to get paid from the sell side. Department of Justice said, no good. This has been ongoing for quite a long time. NAR and the Department of Justice came to an agreement. August 17th was the start date to officially implement the new rules, which we just touched upon.
Right. Which is you must have a buyer's agreement if from an agency standpoint, and there's no offer of compensation listed on the MLS.
Right, and we've talked about this in previous
Yep,
podcasts,
yep.
where that could be considered collusion, steering, cartel-like behavior.
Yes.
Where, it's typically 5 to 6%. However, if you asked NAR, Illinois Realtors, any of the MLSs, they're going to say commissions were always negotiable, but yet commissions have remained in this 5 to 6% for the last 40 plus years.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, and there's been great benefit, right, in the sense of if a listing agent puts out there, hey, I'm going to pay the buyer. If you're listing your home and you know that that your property is offering a commission for some buyer to show your property, you know you're putting money on the table, so your property will be sold. So that's a part of it.
Right.
But on the other hand, the agents are not supposed to show properties based on what they're going to get out of it, even though they're full commission agents.
correct. So it's a weird.
Piranha's going to bite.
Exactly.
Okay. So, Matt, so this is what's happening. Let's talk about the potential for some workarounds.
So yes, so I have here, this is a half-page ad that was in the Sunday Chicago Tribune 2 weeks ago. And
They still have the Tribune? I mean, they still have the paper. You have it delivered, Matt?
So I'm old school, and no, I don't have it delivered. I have a digital version of the Tribune,
Okay.
but because the Sunday paper is so valuable for their advertising, they give me a printed copy, even though I don't want one.
Wow.
So that
Okay,
is why I know
interesting.
this ad
That's old
existed,
school.
and I
So
actually
you're
cut
sitting
it out.
in your Scooby-Doo pajamas and you're reading the Sunday paper, literally?
Sometimes.
Okay.
Sometimes smoking a pipe,
Smoking
having
pipe?
a cup of coffee.
Yeah.
It's all
right.
good.
All right.
So anyway, this is a letter to Illinoisans, and in summary, there was a couple things that came to mind, and it was pointing out the fact that you may have heard that there is this date of August 17th. You may have seen about this NAR lawsuit and settlement. And here's what it says. So beginning August 17th, brokers will stop including shared compensation information on the MLS. Shared compensation will still be allowed. It just cannot be communicated on the MLS platform. Instead, brokers will communicate this information in writing, privately, or on their own websites. The amount of compensation will remain negotiable as it always has been.
Wow.
So
who took that? Whose ad is that, Matt?
this is the Illinois Realtors Association.
Wow.
So Jeff Baker, the CEO,
Yeah.
signed here, as
Yeah.
well as Matt Silver, their current president.
Okay.
So
So here we go.
So this is a weird dichotomy. So this is one thing that I wanted to point out, and the second thing.
So what we're seeing in this is hypothetically that before the MLS was the communication device for how much commission you're going to get.
Right.
Now, same thing's going to be happening, just a different way. You have to pass a note to your neighbor or send smoke signals from your teepee or whatever it might be.
So there's two things that are happening here, as Steve eloquently pointed out.
Yes.
That there is this potential workaround. So we're not going to put offers of compensation in the MLS, but according to the letter of the law and the lawsuit, we can still communicate it in a variety of other places. I can put it on my own brokerage website. I could communicate it. I can call Steve and say, hey, I hear you're showing some buyers of my property. Here's what your commission is going to be. There's third-party websites that have come about. So the second part of this is, the attorneys that started this whole settlement lawsuit, they're saying, you guys are doing this workaround. That's probably a stupid idea. We may come after you, and the Department of Justice may come after you again, even though in the letter of the law it says you could still communicate it, just not in the MLS. And secondarily, NAR, from its own perspective, Katie Johnson, who's their chief legal counsel, sent a correspondence to all NAR members saying offers of compensation will continue to be an option of consumers off MLS and in consultation with real estate professionals. So how I read it is there may be more to come post August 17th if the Department of Justice gets their spidey senses going, looking more into this of, is this what the intention was? Okay. So we've moved this offer of compensation out of the MLS, but everybody's still doing it
Yeah.
in another way, shape, form, or fashion through third parties, our own brokerage websites, our own anyway.
So it's a little bit Wild Westish, although there are brokerages that we know of that have very clear guidelines, they're very direct about how they're going to navigate this situation.
Right.
And then there's some that are a little bit more loosey-goosey. So we're going to see how this plays out.
Right, as Steve's saying, there are a few brokerages, especially here in Chicago, that have said we are not at all going
No
to,
workarounds.
There will be no workarounds. There will be no offers of compensation to the buyer's side. You bring a ready, willing, and able buyer, there may or may not be compensation as part of this.
Okay, and what that looks like is I go to look at a home. I don't know whether I'm going to get paid, but as part of my offer, I then write in, hey, the buyer's agent is going to get 2.5% or whatever it's going to be.
So there's a lot of fluidity as well as potential complexities when someone comes with a buyer's agent agreement that says, I am going to pay my buyer's agent X%. There may be on the sell side in their contract, we're going to have a concession or a payback or for a commission rate. If those commissions are different, if they don't correspond, who pays out of pocket? So this is, as Steve's saying, the Wild West and unknown. So I think there's a feel it out attitude to see what's happening.
Yeah, and if you have questions or if you just want to talk about this, you can email peoplenottitles@gmail.com and we will try to handle that. Okay, Matt, Michigan real estate brokers file antitrust suit against the NAR.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that real quick. Is this a trend that's going to be happening more often, do you think?
So I'm not 100% sure if this has happened in this way, shape, or form before.
Okay.
But this caught our attention that a group who owns brokerages in the state of Michigan is suing the NAR for anti-competitive behavior. And in essence, it's a lawsuit filed by a couple guys who own some brokerages in the state of Michigan. And it says compulsory membership in these associations, which would be Michigan Association, NAR, and the local Board of Realtors, as well as the MLS, is an example of antitrust laws, economic coercion, unfair restraint of trade, and conspiracy. So
the NAR has got a target on its back. And why is that, Matt?
Because what happens is, and other states have done this, and I'm getting ahead of myself. So when you are a realtor, when you have a real estate license, you are forced to join the MLS as part of your realtor membership. Now, some states such as Georgia, Alabama, I think California, they have where you don't have to be a realtor and a member of the MLS.
They're separated from each other.
They are separated from each other. Georgia is the one that really comes to mind that was done a few years ago that I remember, where you don't have to be a realtor to join the MLS. But in most states, it is still the common practice that you have to join the MLS when you become a realtor.
Okay.
And they are tied together because so many boards of associations of realtors own the local MLS. So they tie it together. And so that's what this lawsuit is saying is we don't want that. It's
we had to do it. It's not fair. I don't want to, but I have to be able to do my business. I have to join the big club.
Right. And so in essence, the plaintiffs claim this essentially perpetuates
Easy for you to say.
the same compulsory membership practice that has already been found illegal.
Okay.
So based on this NAR lawsuit and settlement, they're saying this is still anti-competitive behavior. This is no good.
Matt, and I was talking to a member of a board of a local real estate association here, and what he talked about is two things. Number one, he said that there are competitors now coming on to the NAR. And
competitors to like a trade association or
like
an MLS?
Yes, like an MLS.
Really?
Yeah. And he also said that he thought that you're going to see local associations start to consolidate because they're going to need to, because there's not as many agents anymore and their viability may be in question.
And that's based on my history with local boards, National Association of Realtors, that has always transpired.
Yeah.
And it was years ago were something from NAR. It was called Board of Choice. Back in the day, it was based on your geographic physical location. So you're in Wheaton. Based on your geographic area, like this is where you're practicing out of, Steve.
You had to go
You
there.
would force
Yeah.
to
Main
join
Street or whatever.
Main Street Association of
Yeah.
Realtors. That was abolished, I don't know how many years ago. I'll say 15 to 20 years ago when NAR came up with the policy Board of Choice, which means you, in the local Chicago market, you could join one or more of the local associations. You're not forced to join just one. And that became where local boards of realtors were then competing for this pool of realtors.
Matt, I always thought that the way that people should be joining these associations is not have to, but want to. And so it is, to me, it's all about the value you bring. And if you can bring value, no one's going to be bitching and moaning.
Right.
But if you're not bringing value, you're like, you have to do that, that just feels funny to me.
Correct. And I feel the same way. And a lot of people don't like the forced membership, but they had to do it because of the MLS.
Okay.
The MLS is the driver of the real estate business across the country. And unless, like you're saying, there's competitors to it, there's alternatives to it, and maybe that will be now that offers of compensation aren't going to be put in there. You know, the value of MLS is not only the centralized database for property transactions, it's the data that you pull out of there after the fact as well.
Yeah.
And that's where the MLSs make so much of their money, is selling that data to a Zillow, to a Realtor.com, to the aggregator, to a Homes.com, where a lot of that is paid. You know, MLSs, in essence, can make a lot of money through that. And the data is the key.
Excuse me.
Nick,
You
you're
know,
good?
yeah, so Matt, what is happening is things are being uncovered, revealed, and I believe it's going to settle in a much better place. The more transparency you can have in all of these boards, all of these associations, how agents are paid and what the value they bring on each side of the transaction, we're going to be better off.
And you had mentioned, as before we move on,
Yep.
about agents getting out of the business. And we're starting to see that year over year across the U.S. realtor membership has dropped, and therefore seeing additional drops as this lawsuit, as the settlement is now settled, the data's come and gone, where more and more realtors are going to figure out this is not worth my time, trouble, and money to continue this when I'm not doing any business. And I think you have said this in the past, that a lot of agents are uncomfortable having that conversation with a potential buyer to say, I need you to sign this agreement that you will exclusively work with me, and oh, by the way, here's how much I want to get paid.
Right, and oh, by the way, here's the value I'm going to bring, as opposed to I'm going to open up the door, I'm going to bring these values, be able to search for the home, be able to negotiate, be able to give you expert advice that is going to be more than worth the commission you're going to pay me. So,
Yes.
all right, Matt.
Thank you for that.
U.S. inflation, mortgage rates, and mortgage news. Everyone is talking about mortgage rates coming down. Enlighten us.
I'll sum it up. Inflation, according to the Fed, has been roped in. The Fed is patting themselves on the back and saying, we're
good.
it.
Yeah.
We did it. So, inflation.
And we'd love to hear how you guys feel about that. Has inflation been roped in, or are you being hornswoggled?
Right. And so, and we're going to talk about this next, the disconnect between economists / the Fed, as well as everyday U.S. consumers.
Yeah.
But inflation continues to slightly go down month over month, year over year. And if you look at it, the goal is 2%. It's still 2.5% to 2.9%, the inflation rate. According to the Fed, that's good. And what this means is, and everybody is anticipating, the next time the Fed meets is in mid-September, I think in 1.5 to 2 weeks. And the worldwide expectation is there will finally be a rate cut. The question is, how big will the first rate cut be? Will it be 0.25 basis point, 0.5 basis point, potentially more? So that's what people are waiting and seeing, but everybody is expecting this rate cut to happen based on the Fed, when they've implemented the rising interest rates to tamp down cost. Anyway, I'm not an economist. I said I would love to have been one in a previous life because, like meteorologists, they could be wrong and nobody knows.
Yeah.
Or cares.
Procrastinate? Okay, anyway, easy for me to say.
There you go. But I found
Prognosticate. Thank you.
Very good.
Yeah.
But I found this article, and it's saying what I was just saying is the Fed is saying we have finally won.
Yeah. You're good. Even you may not feel good, but let me just
Right.
tell you, you are good.
So the title of this article, it was an AP article, says the Fed welcomes a soft landing, even if many Americans don't feel like cheering. So in essence, Jerome Powell, chair of the Fed, saying we've achieved the goal of tamping down inflation without causing a widely predicted recession and high unemployment, which I will give them credit for. When the pandemic hit, everything was out of whack, the economy, everybody, I won't go into it, but at that time it was, whoa, what's going to happen? The economy is going to crumble, and so the Fed took charge of it. They were giving cash out to U.S. consumers. You may have got a check in the mail. I don't think I got a check, but some people did. And they began raising the interest rates on the whatever it is.
The Fed rate. Yeah.
And, incrementally raise it up, raise it up, raise it up, raise it up, raise it up. And the fear was they're going to raise it so high, their job market's going to crumble, prices are going to go out of whack, and we're going to go into a recession.
Right.
Never happened. So I give the Fed credit for that. This is indeed a soft landing. However, there is this disparity between what the Fed and other economists say. This has been a win for the U.S. economy. Everyday homeowners, Americans, consumers are saying, I
don't feel like I'm winning.
I'm not
racking
winning.
up credit cards more than ever before. Car payments are behind. Housing
Right.
payments are behind. People don't feel like they're winning because they're not. Maybe.
Correct. And I want to find this. That's unprecedented. Consumer sentiment. Hurtful inflation has dimmed many Americans' outlook. In addition to high loan rates along with elevated housing prices, many young Americans fear that home ownership is increasingly out of reach. According to a McKinsey study, 53% of consumers still say that rising prices and inflation are among their concerns.
So it might be optics, it might be reality, whatever it is.
So when the Fed looks at a chart and says, oh, the inflation rate is this, is this, is this, is this, the inflation rate has definitely gone down. And it's at the lowest point it's been, I think, in over 2 years. But because prices have increased so high and they're starting to slightly come down, but people, in an economist's view, your wages will keep up or be above the inflation rate. So if inflation is at 3%, your earnings should be 3% or above to keep up with inflation. And some people have realized that. A lot of people have not.
Yeah. Matt, here's how I feel. You want to know how I feel?
I'd love to know how you feel.
So if you come home from the grocery store with 2 little sacks of groceries and you set them down on your counter and you felt like you spent way more than you ever have before, and then you turn on the news and you have some economists show you a chart that how you feel and your reality isn't really how it's going, or you go to the gas pump.
Hey, thanks for listening to the People Not Titles podcast. We are brought to you by our great sponsors, Land Trust Title Services, your partners for
the
results.
Gas pump. Or you take a cross-country trip, and it used to cost you $400 to drive your family across country, and now it costs you $800 for whatever reasons. Or you see the price of everything going up in an exponential way where you go, man, I can't afford the same things I used to be able to afford.
Right.
And then you have someone get up and go, oh, but this chart and that chart, and I know your reality is different, but these charts are you kind of think, am I crazy? So all that to say that I think you have to step away from the charts and the commentators and go, what am I actually experiencing and how do I respond to it?
Right. And I think that's a good way to look at it because there is a disconnect between an economist's viewpoint of what is successful
Right.
and consumers who are doing this every day, where they are, I won't say living paycheck to paycheck, but they're living on a budget.
Yep.
They're looking at their expenses, and yes, this 12 eggs is now $3 where I used to pay 99 cents.
Or health insurance costs going up, or what, just on and on we go. Okay.
So what I will say associated with that is, yes, the inflation has gone down, but and this was, I think, something that came out last week, where there was this, and I forget what company, it might have been Kroger, that came out and said, yes, we have raised prices, and it was not public knowledge, but it was like, yes, we have taken advantage of this situation and have raised our prices across the board. And I think we said this in a previous podcast, where companies, especially in the food industry, they don't have a lot of opportunities. The margins are so small. Grocery stores, the margins are minuscule. And so
when they
the
see daylight, they can go
literally
bing, bang,
when the
boom.
pandemic hit and supply chains were literally cut, all these things went out of whack. It was like, this is our time
What can
to
I get here?
raise
Yeah.
prices, and they really did. So that is also impacting U.S. consumers across the board. Was prices probably could come down, but they have put them up at a point where, unless we as buyers boycott and say, I'm not going to buy this or this or this, or I'm going to buy a less expensive alternative. Instead of getting a bag of Doritos, I'm going to get a bag of Aldi nacho chips.
Right.
People can vote with their wallet and pocketbook.
Absolutely. And and there will always be, there's a large gap. Someone's going to step in that gap and provide services and create a business for themselves.
And like gas prices. Gas prices, $3.50, $3.60, $3.70 right now in the Chicago metro area.
Yep. $3.08 yesterday for me, Matt. So I know Chicago's really expensive.
$3.08.
$3.08.
Where?
Thornton's on Army Trail and 53 or whatever. Yeah. So
that's impressive.
That's impressive.
I was going to say.
I was surprised actually. I looked at it and said, "Is that right?"
And people like to talk about, why are my gas prices this, gas prices that. For those of you that don't know, the U.S. is pumping out more oil now than ever before, and I think is almost as high as what OPEC is doing right now. And OPEC controls all this oil supply. They can manipulate the prices, but I think a barrel of oil went down tremendous. I forget, under 60, 70 yesterday. Wow. Anyway,
okay,
we won't get into the hard number.
No,
but the inflation rate is going down. Expect a rate cut.
Where are mortgage rates right now, Matt?
Mortgage rates right now, so these fluctuate daily, as you know.
Yep.
So when we looked at this, depending on your credit score, if you got a great credit score, it's like 6.25 to 6.4 for a 30-year mortgage. And I think what we want, as well as I think what the U.S. wants.
What is the magic number?
What is that magic number? I've heard 5.5%.
I heard 5.8.
So
5.8, which is how tall maybe Robert De Niro is, maybe a little shorter than that.
No, definitely not. All these
5'5".
actors are so much shorter than you think.
All right.
But yes, so mortgage rates are coming down. The market has sort of looked at and said and factored in this upcoming rate cut. So when the rate cut actually happens, I don't think it's going to impact the rates, like drop it down tremendously, but it will be a good sign, and hopefully some additional rate cuts will happen this year. For a 15-year fixed rate, 5.5%, maybe if your credit is good, and depending on your lender, maybe a little lower right now. So that's good.
Awesome.
And that's where we want it, because the rates over the last couple of years, as we've talked about, 7 plus.
Right. Yeah, and in the early 2000s, Matt, 6.3 and 5.5 for 15 years. That was a refi boom.
All right, Matt. Listing, inventory, and home sale
prices in June. Let's move on.
So the first thing I want to talk about is the market has been very slow.
Okay.
It continues to be slow.
It's dragging.
When you look at it, when you look at NAR's numbers, and I think we said this in a previous podcast, their economist Lawrence Yun has said this will be the worst year for existing home sales since 1995. And they're tracking at like under 4 million existing home sales. Typically it's 5 to 6 million, and if it's a boom year, even more than that. So that's first and foremost. But the housing market is filled with what they're calling wait-and-see home buyers. And according to NAR, they have a pending contract home sales index where they look at contracts signed into the future, And this index is at its lowest it's been in a number of years. So it dropped 5.5% last month and is down 8.5%.
So pending contracts are at its lowest point.
Correct. And
Wow.
out of the U.S., the Midwest region
Is really
is
low.
the lowest of the low.
So a lot of a pent up.
And so this wait and see, what it means with wait and see home buyers, I think this also translates into wait and see home sellers, is I'm going to wait to put my home on the market when this rate cut happens or additional rate cut happens. People who are looking to buy, they're waiting like, hey, I'm going to wait till mortgage rates go down a little bit more.
Yeah.
So they're waiting, they're seeing what's going to happen, and at some point they will move off the fence. When, we don't know, but they will.
All right, let's talk, Matt. I was surprised to see this. How many buyers backed out of deals?
Yeah, so this is an interesting stat that I've never seen before, and it caught our attention. And it was a headline. Redfin put out a report that said in the month of July, 59,000 people, home purchase agreements were canceled.
Wow.
Which means, here's my agreement, I'm ready to buy the house, and at one reason or another, at the last minute, they said, no thank you. And that represented 16% of all home sales.
And
that
it
went
could
under
be
contract.
lenders, it could be economic situation change, it could be the listing party thought I can get more, whatever, right? There's a lot of different dynamics with that.
Right, and so this number of contracts canceling, most since 2017.
Wow,
And
so
I
you don't have a
remember-
deal until you have a deal, Matt.
Right, but that was an interesting data point that, like, that's kind of crazy that all these people who are ready to buy a home have decided to back out. Like you said, could be multiple factors, and it could be someone in their ear saying, why don't you wait and see, mortgage rates are going to come down.
Matt, hackers have scammed real estate pros out of $400 and almost $50 million. Talk about that.
This was an article. There are numerous cases as well as articles.
We have seller scams. We're constantly at the title company. We're constantly battling this. We're constantly talking about it with lenders. Constantly talking about it with our attorneys. Constantly talking about it with agents. Yet still, everyone's aware of it. Wire fraud. But these scams are elaborate. What are a couple things people can do to avoid it?
I wish I could offer you like this is the
100%
way to do it.
surefire advice.
So there was an article that Steve and I read, and it was someone in the industry who was buying a home. I don't remember who she was, but she was buying a home for a large amount of money. And the scam occurred where she was communicating via email with her lender as well as her real estate attorney. So between these 10 communications, which were legitimate communications, whoever was this hacker must have been monitoring these communications between her and the attorney and the lender. And on the 9th communication, this hacker, whoever they are, stepped in and said, hey, here is where you need to wire your funds.
And the email address was just one.
Everything looked legitimate. And because this hacker was part and has been monitoring the conversation, they were able to, in a sophisticated, complex, legitimate-looking way, say, here is where you wire the money.
Send me the money.
And this person did not think twice about it, did not think like, oh, is this legitimate? This is part of my communications.
Right. Of course it is legitimate.
What we would recommend is whenever you get an ask to say, send the wire to fill in the blank.
You gotta call someone.
Call.
Yep.
Call to ensure that this is legitimate. So that is what transpired. She transferred over $1 million to this. I think she was able to get some of it back. But that was someone in the industry who knows about fraud. So the sophistication of the hackers had become more debilitating, more complex. And so once again, be aware.
Yeah, you got to work with professionals.
Real estate is an easy place where people are always
It's a big cash. It's a lot of cash flowing. It's a big buy. It's a big ask.
But yeah, so just be aware. No matter who you are, if you're the real estate attorney, be aware of what you're saying and what's being communicated. The lenders, same thing. The title company, and obviously the home buyers and sellers. Just be aware of it, and when you are transferring money in any way, shape, or form, verify where you are wiring it to with a phone call, whether it's to your title company, to your lender, to a bank. Just make sure that it is legitimate, because it's so hard, and it's going to cost you so not just the money you're losing, but the time and effort that you will need to try and get back some of that money. And once it goes,
It's gone.
Tough
to get it back.
to get it back.
Matt, let's talk about just some home sales stats and with the Chicago metro area and Wisconsin.
Yeah, so I'll start off at the high level with U.S.
Yep.
And so NAR comes out with their figures. So July is the latest month. Existing home sales grew just over 1% in July to an adjusted rate, and I think I had said this, 3.95 million home sales. Once again, not good.
Right.
And there's been a 4-month decline. However, it's a little higher. Median home sales prices are up just over 4% to $422,600.
Wow.
Which once again is the highest ever.
Yep.
I think we've said this for now. This is our 6th month of doing this. Each month existing.
We break in records.
And so this is higher than high. And yes, so 13th consecutive month of year-over-year price gains. Inventory of unsold homes went a little higher, just under 1%. And we have a 4-month supply of inventory. And the magic number that they always say is we want a 6-month supply of inventory for a good balance.
Good balance.
And so this is U.S.
Yep.
Encompassing all 50 states. In the Chicago metro area, some positive, some negative. Closed sales year over year was up just over 5%. Median sales price, $368,000. Once again, another record. Inventory of homes for sale went up slightly, just over 4%. Days on market, it was 21 last month. It's 20 this month.
Wow.
But yeah, closed sales month over month, lower.
And how many months of inventory, Matt, for Chicago?
Months of inventory, I don't know the months of
Okay.
inventory. Days on market, if you translate it, it's probably 2.5 months
Okay.
or less.
Yeah.
So
Which
once
that's,
again,
that's really small.
right. So
Chicagoland's inventory is lower, generally speaking, than the nation.
Correct. And we sound like a broken record because inventory levels are low, prices are inflated, people are still buying houses quickly.
Yep.
If you have a listing that's priced right, it's going to move. I look in my neighborhood. I recently looked at the homes listed in my neighborhood. They are actually sitting a little longer,
Yeah.
but the prices have not moved. So
Yeah.
whoever is
They're
listed,
waiting it out.
They're waiting it out. There's a house that's listed for 1.2 million. I'm like, there's no way. They
Right.
think they're going to get this because someone might have got that a year ago.
Maybe someone will come in.
But time, and we're reaching. The spring sales market is typically that's when, and
Yeah.
so we are now at the point where those spring sales are closing or have closed, and so for the rest of the year, correct me if I'm wrong, it's a lower level.
It'll be a lower level unless we
Lower.
see interest rates, and then we'll see another kaboom.
Yeah. So
Wisconsin.
they are still, the shining spot in the Midwest marketplace. Monthly home sales up from last year, almost 5%. Total statewide listings year over year up 4%, and median home price year over year up 8% to just almost $325,000 for the state of Wisconsin, which is amazing. And once again, do you have a second home in Wisconsin by any chance?
No.
Neither do I, but many people do.
Yes.
Especially here in the Chicago area or even in the Wisconsin area.
Wow.
I know personally a couple people in my network of people.
Yeah,
who
everyone's
have,
going over the border.
they're still here in Chicago, but at some point in time when they retire or the time is right, they will move full time there.
100%.
So that has always been the case. But no, Wisconsin real estate market is a little healthier in terms of inventory sales, but still low compared to other places. So in terms of that, Wisconsin, good job.
Okay, Matt, in closing, anything else we need to cover?
Well, in the closing information, we got a lot.
Oh,
to
let's
cover.
hear it.
Yeah,
Let's
we
hear
got
it.
a lot
Yeah.
to cover.
Yeah,
in the
let's talk
closing
about it.
information. This is just an FYI for Chicago area attorneys, realtors. recording fees in Kane County are increasing from $26 to $48 on October 1st.
Okay.
Just an FYI, we will be sending out that information to our network of attorneys and realtors within the next 2 weeks as a reminder. But just an FYI for those watching in the Chicago area and doing business in transactions in Kane County, recording fees are going up. One thing I wanted to mention, and this is for realtors out there, NAR has been doing this probably for 20 years, but September is Realtor Safety Month. And for those of you in the profession, you may know someone who has been impacted by realtor safety, whether it's being, and I won't get into it, but realtor safety is a real issue, and the real estate profession is on the high side of workplace incidents with.
You go into the home, you show a home. It's one of the values that a buyer's agent actually provides is that, as a listing agent, I have an agent showing my home instead of just some clown walking through your home, putting everything in their pockets.
And so this happens semi-frequently where someone will arrange, I want a tour of this house, not during an open house. Steve, you're my agent, will you show me? Typically a female agent may be attacked, murdered.
Shenanigans happen.
No good.
Right.
So for realtors out there, NAR actually has a very good safety program. September is Realtor Safety Month. They have a ton of resources. You can go to your local board or state association as well. I know there's a lot of videos. There's a lot of
apps.
Training. There are apps.
Yeah.
But what I would say is realtors, stay safe by letting people know
where you're going, who you're with.
And validate and check out if someone reaches out to you that you don't know who they are, to validate, have them come to their office, have them provide a driver's license, take a copy of that driver's license, hold it, make them, especially if it's a criminal, they're going to be uncomfortable and not do any of that. So take that extra step so that you're not just, I need this deal, I'm going to do it quickly. Take the time, because there's so many stories out there that happen. So I just wanted to point out that realtor safety is a huge issue, and realtors, stay safe out there because your livelihood is not as important as your own life.
Absolutely.
I'm going to give a nice plug for our podcast. Steve has a tremendous interview with a local attorney named Phil Fernaro.
Yes, excellent.
And if you want to talk a little bit about it, but
it's a great local attorney that has taken us on a journey of his career path and how he just follows his passion and continues to be viable as an entrepreneur, and a lot of great life lessons in that one.
I mean, I know you prefer seeing this podcast,
yes,
but
there's hardly any better than the Market Trends.
Market Trends is the apex, the zenith of the podcast, but Steve has some tremendous interviews, and this latest with Phil is another winner. So check it out to hear about Phil and his journey and who he is. He's also a podcast host,
yes.
if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, Lightbulb Moments is his podcast.
Yeah. And then the final thing I'll mention, business-related wise, is November 7th for you real estate attorneys out there. Is November 7th in Schaumburg is our fall CLE, which will be our final CLE session for 2024. We will be coming out with our 2025 schedule soon. But this last one, the topic is not quote-unquote finalized, but it will be related to the NAR settlement,
absolutely,
the lawsuit, and what attorneys need to know now and moving forward to navigate through this new system and the process of the settlement that we've talked about ad nauseum for 6 months. What else is on your list, Steve? I'm excited.
Matt, nothing is on my list besides it's football season.
Very excited.
The Bears have gone 4-0 into preseason. We're not going to get excited about that, but the first game against the Tennessee Titans. So
they're actually, I think, favored to win that game.
Yeah. So we're excited here as Bears fans. I know the Packers across the border.
I'm going to put you on the spot.
Yes.
Win-loss, 17-game season. What's your prediction?
I think they're going to have 10 wins.
I'm going to say 8 wins.
Okay, 10-8.
And I'm going on the low side because being a lifelong Chicagoan, being a Chicago sports fan, everybody is so excited.
Yep.
I am tamping down my excitement, but please note, listeners and viewers out there, I am very excited about our receiver core, Williams at the quarterback, the defense. I mean, they're on
Everything.
they're on Hard Knocks.
Yeah.
If you haven't seen the Bears
Yeah.
on Hard Knocks, it's all coming together. What else do you want
Yeah,
to talk about?
Well, and I will say this, Matt. I also tamped down my enthusiasm and brought it down to 10 wins.
Ooh.
Okay, so, and finally, Cubs are,
They had
they're close
they
to
won 18.
being out of it.
I believe they won 18-8 in August. Great record.
Yep.
They won the first game in September, and I think they lost the last
yeah.
two.
And so they may not be good enough. And the White Sox did they break a record for consecutive losses?
Consecutive losses, they may have broken that.
And they have
earlier.
31 wins out of 150 games or something like that.
For you White Sox fans out there, I'm
Brutal.
sorry.
Yeah, the last 3 that are out there.
But yes, they broke the franchise record for most losses last week. I don't know what the Major League Baseball historical. I
don't
think
know
it's
either.
the Mets
Yeah.
their inaugural season. But yes, you White Sox fans out there, so sorry.
Our condolences.
What else? What else we got? I was at the Northwestern game this
Okay.
Saturday.
They won. Great small stadium.
It's a mini stadium, 12,000. It's fantastic. If you get a chance to go.
All right.
All right.
People, not titles, signing off.
Thank you.
Thank you. Blessings.
All right, that was good.
Hey, thanks for listening to the People Not Titles podcast. We are proudly sponsored by Land Trust Title Services. If you enjoyed the podcast, please hit the like button, please subscribe, and we'd love it if you'd share our podcast with your friends. Thanks a lot.